right, welcome back, everyone. This is our last session together. It's been a fun journey. But yeah, after today, this is the last day. And so we'll start as always with our Toronto land acknowledgement because that's where ICL is situated. So Takaranto or Toronto is on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee speaking nations, including the Huron-Wendat, Quechua, Seneca, and Mohawk, and was most recently joined by the Mississaugas of the Credit. The territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and Anishinaabe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the lands and the relationships around the Great Lakes. What this means is that by living and working here, we all have a responsibility to the environment and to each other to treat each other with peace, friendship, and respect. What we do now will affect the next 7 generations. So for today, we are going to have our lecture on building teams. And then we're going to talk about transformative organizing and transformative tasks. We'll teach you all about what those are and how they're kind of different than just assigning tasks to people. And we will do our breakout session. If we don't get a whole lot more people, I think we'll just do the same thing that we did last week and just do it all together as a group. That worked really well. And then we'll summarize our learnings, and then we will have a short evaluation that we'd like you to complete at the end, just to give us some feedback about, what went well, what didn't go well, what you learned, what you'd like to see more of from us. And yeah, that'll be our day today. So before we get into our lecture on organizing in teams, why do we even organize in teams? It's complicated, right? You have to manage a bunch of different relationships between all these different people. So why do we even do it? So we organize in teams because it allows you to meet higher goals, builds communication through relationships. You end up with a diversity of skills and interests, and it provides some support and mentorship, and it's more fun. It's really hard to do like any work, but especially advocacy and organizing work completely on your own. It's stressful, it's difficult. Often, it can be disappointing when you don't get all the wins that you're hoping for. And so having the support and mentorship of others, being able to provide just kind of encouragement to each other, it's a lot nicer. It makes the work fun rather than overwhelming. And yeah, the diversity of skills and interests is really important too, because as we've talked about throughout all of these sessions together, there's a whole bunch of different stuff that goes into organizing and advocacy work. And one person likely doesn't have the skills and expertise to do all of it. So you need a bunch of different people who have different skills to be able to do everything that needs to be done. So let's talk about the types of leadership. I think we touched on this very, very briefly kind of near the beginning of this series of lectures, where we talked about recruiting volunteers and what kind of leaders people are. So we have a couple of different types of leaders. We have the charismatic leader, and that's a person you can kind of see on our diagram that there's one person who's really in the center of it, and they're surrounded by all of these other people. So the charismatic leader, sum it all up, I'm the leader. That's the person that really holds everything together. They're at the center of the work. And if they happen to leave the work, the whole team would likely fall apart because they're the one that holds kind of all of the knowledge and resources, and they're the one that everyone is organizing around. Then we have a more democratic process where everyone is the leader. Everyone kind of has their own thing that they're doing and that they're in charge of. On the surface, it seems really great, right? Because you want people to be equal. You want everyone to have a sense of ownership over the project. You want everyone to be using their skills and interests to the best of their abilities by having autonomy and leadership over what they're doing. The problem is your team's not very cohesive this way. Everyone's kind of divided, and you end up not really meshing, not working well together. So on the surface, it looks really great. In practice, it doesn't work very well. And then we have the interdependent leadership. This is what we call the snowflake model. And this is the model that ICL really teaches. And you can see it is quite a complicated model. It's not just one person as leader or everyone is a leader. Instead, we have this fun kind of snowflake shape. And we'll take you through why we think that this is the most ideal leadership model. So as you can see, there is in fact one person in the center. You need to have someone who's going to be in charge, someone who's holding the team together. But then they also have their core team surrounding them. So you've got your leader in the center, then you have these 4 other people who are in charge of their own kind of departments, if you want to think about it that way. So the leader is the person in charge, and then you have all these people who are like kind of sub leaders. So you might have one person who's in charge of things like communications. You might have someone else who's in charge of, I don't know, HR related stuff. We're thinking about this even just like an organization, right? This person is managing all the people. You might have another person over here who's in charge of like fundraising. Then you're going to end up with someone over here who's doing, I don't know, like events planning. So these are all people who, like, these are very diverse skills, right? One person can't handle all of those things. So you have the one person in the center who's managing the whole project, and then they trust all of their different sub leaders to take on their kind of projects. And then with the sub leaders, we have the people who are doing the work. These are your volunteers, or the people that you've recruited to do work on this project. So we've got our communications person over here, and they're in charge of the project, the process. They're going to make all the decisions and do the planning, and then they're going to have their volunteers carry out all the stuff. I said their communication, so maybe we'll have this person over here doing phone banking, and we'll have this person over here doing some canvassing, and we'll have this person over here writing emails, like that kind of stuff, right? So they're in charge of their team. So we really like this model because it allows for really sustainable relationship ratios. If you had just that one person in the center who's trying to build relationships with, I don't know, how many people do we have? 3, 6, 9, 12, 16 people. That's a lot of people to maintain relationships with. That's a lot of people that you have to know what their skills are and what their interests are and what they're good at and maybe what they're not so good at, and be able to make some small talk with them, to check in with them about how they're doing and encourage them to do some self-care. Like, that's a lot to do with 16 people. So instead, you've got your leader in the center, and they're really only maintaining relationships with their 4 sub-leaders here. And then the sub-leaders are maintaining relationships with their teams. So that's more sustainable. You can really get to know people and understand what their interests and their abilities and their skills are. There's some mutual accountability here too. In the one where the charismatic leader, where it's just one person in the center, I mean, who's holding them accountable? Because they're the only leader. They're the one who's in charge. Is anyone going to question them? I don't know, like maybe, but also maybe not. And the same with the other one where everyone is leaders. If everyone's a leader, then who's going to hold anyone else accountable? You're all kind of off doing your own thing. So there's some mutual accountability here. You have your leader in the center, but you also have other people who are in charge of what they're doing. So there's some accountability. There's some clearly defined roles and responsibilities. So if you have someone who's in charge of communications and someone who's in charge of, you know, what did I say? What were the examples I gave? Someone who's in charge of communications, someone who's in charge of like recruitment, they know what they're supposed to be doing. They know what responsibilities are attached to that, and they can carry out those tasks rather than, you know, one person who's trying to do everything, or a bunch of people who are just all off doing their own thing. And there's also the capacity for exponential growth. So if we had just one leader in the center and they're trying to maintain relationships with all these 16 people, that's already way too much. What if you need 17 people? Are they going to be able to build another relationship? Maybe not. But when you have all of these other people who are off building teams, eventually, and we'll get into transformative tasks too, all of these other people, through their transformative tasks, through their responsibilities, are also going to build their leadership capacity, and perhaps they'll also end up recruiting other people and being in charge of teams. So you can expand pretty exponentially here. This is a fairly small group of people that are running. 16 it's a good size, but it is fairly small. There's lots of room for expansion here. And with the snowflake model, that can really happen. Does that make sense? Does anyone have questions about this model? Because it's kind of complicated to think about. So if you have any questions, or has anyone worked within this model before? Yeah, Jennifer, I see you nodding your head. You've worked in this kind of team?
Yeah, I feel like that's what a lot of sort of grassroots type of places, how they work. It's kind of like we all meet, we kind of delegate out and decide on where people's strengths and skill sets are, and then you kind of, okay, those two people are going to go and do some social media, those two people are going to go and do some contacting, and that kind of stuff. I feel like it's similar.
Yeah, absolutely. The really successful grassroots organizations do tend to use this kind of model, the ones that are sustainable and really develop out. I mean, it's kind of the model that ICL uses, and we've seen plenty of growth within our organization in the past. How many years has it been? 7 years? It was 2016 that we started. So there's been quite exponential growth within ICL. So we can attest to the fact that as a relatively small charitable organization, it's worked very well for us. And we do tend to see that this is a model that works really well for other organizations too. So that said, yeah, Jennifer, you had something.
I just wanted to say, I feel like with this model too, like everybody really has to have an equal stake in what they're doing, like for the cause, the greater good, the cause, like like I'm just thinking, yeah, like for the health coalition or for different neighborhood food security stuff, like everybody kind of usually it's kind of volunteer based almost, or you have like a real passion, like everybody has the same passion for an end goal of social justice in some way. But I feel like inside a workplace it can be a bit more tricky because not necessarily everybody is really committed to doing stuff. It could just be a job for them, right? So I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that really does link really well back to what we were talking about a few sessions ago when we were talking about recruitment. Because you'll remember that we emphasized that the biggest thing that we want to do is connect with people. And then we want to explore their interests and their resources and what they want to do, because you're absolutely right, especially when you're working with volunteers, like they have to be invested in the project, or why are they going to stay? Even within like paid organizations, like there's lots of jobs out there. If people don't feel as though they're connected to the cause, they might just leave and find something else. So absolutely, connecting to them, making sure that you understand what their skills and resources are and what they're interested in doing is really important if you want people to like stay involved in your organization. Peter, I see you unmuted yourself. Did you have something to say too?
I was just thinking in terms of within an organization, does sometimes this sort of start to mirror the hierarchy of an organization, and then you run into some issues in terms of being in silos, and to be conscious of it. The small group leader doesn't have to be one of those people who's in a leadership group or anyway, like that doesn't have to represent that. They can certainly recruit. It usually works better when you recruit somebody from a different area in the organization, and then start to build a team that way. And then you have a more cohesive agenda among the sort of middle group that represents the first branching of the snowflake. And I think sometimes, I've certainly seen a lot when it sort of stems out and ends up being directors at that first level of snowflake, that they all have their own agendas, and they bring in their own people, and they create and they maintain that sort of silo thing, and that's something to escape within this model. But I think when you do, it creates incredible opportunities for people.
And in like my kind of opinion, deviating a bit from what is on all my ICL notes, I think that that's really the role of the person who's in the very center. They might not be actually like doing very much, but their responsibility is to make sure that everyone else is connected and working towards the same cause. So they're the one who's going to know, like, oh, I know that this person over here is working on this, and this person over here is working on something kind of similar, and I think they could support each other. So I'm going to bring them back in together and make sure that everyone is still working very cohesively. So like really that's the job of the real center leader, is to keep everyone together, keep everyone connected, to make sure that we're not running into any silos. Seeing that the left hand and the right hand talk to each other. Yes, absolutely. Chair connects the dots. Yes, for sure. So how do we get to the snowflake model then? Because that's all well and good to say that this is the most ideal kind of leadership model. But how do we actually get there? Because it doesn't just come out of nowhere. You can't just wake up one day and be like, I now have the snowflake model. It kind of evolves. So we say that there's about 5 steps to it. The first step is potential. The team is in infancy. You might have a few like really eager volunteers. Someone has identified that there's a problem, and there's a few people who are working together now who are like, yes, we want to do some work on this. So it has potential. We know that this group could be doing something, but they're not really there yet. They haven't organized. So we need to network, we need to recruit, we need to bring some more people in so the team is large enough to be able to accomplish the tasks that they're setting out to do. The second step is team formation. So the organizer needs to work to escalate volunteers up the ladder to become organizers and keep recruiting others. So this is moving beyond like the charismatic leader, right? Because that's about where they'd be right now. There's one person who's kind of in the center. They're recruiting and being in charge of things. They need to escalate the people who are kind of interested, but not assigned to anything yet, and start building their core team so that you have those different sub leaders there who are ready to start taking on more responsibility. The third step is at a team. You've got 2 or more organizers. The team is growing. Maybe they're doing some events. More organizers and more team members are joining. And then at step 4, the team has those 4 core organizers and 1 team lead, and they can begin to form their teams and start shaping the snowflake. And then at step 5, that's when they've hit their fullest potential. So teams may start splitting and multiplying into more teams, and your snowflake starts getting bigger. So those are the steps that kind of takes to get there. Does that make sense? A lot of this goes back to all of the things that we were talking about in recruiting volunteers and having a really defined organizing statement and a theory of change, because your people need to know what it is you're trying to accomplish in order for this snowflake to really start forming. So a few of these things would be happening all the way through the formation of the snowflake. So, you know, when the team is right in its infancy, that's when you're going to be recruiting people. When the team is starting to form and you're moving people up the ladder to become organizers, that's probably when you're going to be defining your organizing statement and your theory of change, because once you understand what's going to be required to do the work, you can start forming like teams to be able to actually do it. Do we need a communications person for this, or is that not necessary? Are we going to need to run events? Because if that's the case, we're going to need someone who plans events. What do we need to be able to do this? That's going to come out in your organizing statement and your theory of change, and you can start forming teams around that and start assigning tasks, which we're going to get to kind of later in this lecture. Any kind of questions or comments about that? Makes sense?
I just wanted to share, Mel, from my experience. Inherent in this snowflake model is like the distribution of decision making and power, and allowing people to take leadership, and that's also really important. So it's kind of an opposite from the silo threat. If you don't give people that authority, and then there's also a risk that this won't really work out. Yeah, so I've experienced that, and it's important. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because as these teams form, they do have to have some sort of agency over the tasks that they're doing, right? They need to have some leadership capacity. If you have to run by absolutely everything you're going to be doing with, the person in the very center, the leader of the project, no one's going to get anything done, because that's quite micromanaging. And also, if you form these teams because other people have the skills and knowledge needed to carry out tasks, it probably doesn't need to be run by your leader, because they probably don't know all of it, right? That there's really specialized things out there that people just, your leader cannot be expected to know absolutely everything. So you have to give your sub leaders and even within the teams some agency and some meaningful decision-making power, because there's a difference between allowing people to make decisions and giving people meaningful decision-making power. I could let you choose what color you want to paint the walls, but it's not actually very meaningful. But if I allow you to really take ownership over an event and come up with ideas and all kinds of stuff like that, and let you carry it out, that is much more meaningful. So yes, thank you for bringing that up, Christine. That is essential to the snowflake model. So on that note then, what do bad teams do? Because most of us have probably been on a bad team or two in our lives. So what have been your experiences in a team that just didn't work? And what made that experience not great for you? And this can be anything. It can be organizing work. It can be your work at Tim Hortons. All teams, I think, are really relevant.
Well, I don't know the right way to say this necessarily, but I think I can kind of go. I remember being in a team where there was no real identified leader or starter or organizer, whatever you want to call them, or chair. And it was just all chaos all the time. There was nothing ever got done in the meetings. There was never a decision made. There was never a okay, how are we moving forward to the next? What are the tasks? There was no sort of outline of how to move forward. And yeah, it was almost if I can say this, too much democracy without first building the structure of how it's supposed to work, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There still has to be some organization in there, right? Yeah. Peter, did you have an experience?
Yeah, I was going to jump in with the having the team made up of the same kind of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great because it's a passionate group that all share something, but quite often with the same expertise, they have the same skills. And when you're trying to accomplish something, you need a diversity of skills often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Or else you're just in either an echo chamber where everyone's just agreeing with each other.
Which is great if it leads to lunch, and then the rest of the day is fabulous.
Yeah, but then you never get the input of all the other things that need to be done. Or the opposite, which I've seen this happen too, is when everyone kind of has the same knowledge and skills, but slightly different opinions. So they're all going to do the work kind of the same, but are just sitting there arguing over semantics the entire time because everyone wants to have their particular voice heard. And it's just, yeah, then you just end up nitpicking things. Yeah, for sure.
I've seen I guess I would describe it as a rejection of shared ownership, where if you go to your other team members and ask for their thoughts, it's no, that's entirely your authority. I'm not going to give you any input or engage and that's frustrating because you're working on a team because you want to work together with other people. Mm-hmm. And so to have that, I guess it's an expectation around silos versus authority, mm-hmm. But
yeah. It's interesting how that happens, where I think generally speaking, people want their opinions to be heard. They want to have some sort of ownership or decision-making capacity. But I think people get very discouraged sometimes. So eventually they end up just going, nah, it's your choice, it's your decision, you're the leader, you do it. And that's no good either. We don't want that to happen. We do still need a defined leader in the middle, because at the very least, if you're going to have a democracy, there has to be one person in charge who can say, okay, now it's time to take the vote, or else everyone's still just going to sit there and talk. So you need someone who is at the very least leading the meeting and calling a vote if you want it to be a democracy. That's like the bare minimum. And they should really be doing more than that too. But at the very least, that's what you need, right? Someone has to be in charge. Someone has to be providing some sort of direction. Any final thoughts on this one before we, yeah, Sylvia?
In my experience, what did not work in my team when there was not enough communication. How do I say this? Yes, not sharing information with the team on a timely manner, but rather learning it after the fact. Yes, I think communication is very important.
Yeah, absolutely it is, especially to avoid, the issue with silos too. Everyone needs to know what everyone else is doing. Yeah, Joanna?
I've spent a lot of time in teams that were dealing with like highly contentious issues, and I found the most important thing keeping them together was that you have to trust each other, that you'll have that, your team leader or the rest of your team will have your back. So let's say that way you won't necessarily be afraid to like venture out and propose something or even do something in the moment. So like you have to build that trust and that communication.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to know that your team members have your back and that they're going to back you up. Absolutely. It's okay to give people critical feedback for sure, but you still need to be able to trust people too. You need to receive positive encouragement and reinforcement, and yeah, know that nobody's going to throw you under the bus.
If I can, another point is when there's somebody maybe doing too much of the work in some of the subcategories, which in my experience has been quite a bit. And it's not for any lack of other people not necessarily wanting to do it. It's, I think maybe some of the subcategories I think somebody said like having a sort of other leaders in those subcategories as well in the snowflake model to kind of go, okay, so if we're all talking about it's the lack of delegation within those kind of substructures and when those extra groups go away. But yeah, somebody could end up taking on too much and then feeling overloaded. And or even resentful in the team too.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been on teams like that as well, where the person who's like the supervisor or the director is so very invested in the work, I think is probably the kindest way to put that, that they really wanted to have their hands in everything. And I, the salaried employee in this position, was sitting there doing nothing most of the time because I couldn't do anything until they gave me approval. And I had different specialized skills than them too. So they felt the need to do everything and ended up quite burnt out too. Like it was really a shame. I like that supervisor a lot, but just trying to do a little bit too much and not giving trust to their team to carry out their tasks. Yeah, so these are all really good things to keep in mind. So then what happens in bad teams if we're doing all of these things? There's no communication, everyone's in silos, one person's taking on too much. The team just doesn't get anything done. You don't end up accomplishing your goals and tasks because the team is not working effectively. Team doesn't engage each other. if there's no trust amongst the team, or if there's no communication happening, people aren't going to be talking. They're not going to be offering that really great peer support. They're not going to be supporting each other's tasks and the work that they're doing because they're not engaging with each other. And individuals aren't learning or growing over time. And we've talked about that. I don't think we've ever talked about it specifically, but it's come up in all of our lectures, I think, as we've gone along, that we want to move people kind of up the ladder. We want people to always be learning new things. We want them to be gaining more skills. We want them to be gaining more confidence. We want them, even people who are like way out there on the edge of the snowflake model, we want them to be developing and coming closer in so that they also have leadership tasks and things that they're taking on. We want our teams to be growing and developing. We don't want them to be stagnant. So if your team is not functioning well, that's not going to be happening. And the team doesn't coordinate with each other. You know, the things that we've been talking about, they can be really complicated. We'll take even just the example of, you know, our subcategory of the events team and the communications team. They need to be working together. They need to be coordinating, because if I'm running an event, if I'm the event planner, I need the communications team to be putting out all of the information about my event, or nobody's going to show up. So we need to be coordinating. We need to be engaging with each other. We need to be communicating, or you know, our event isn't going to go off very well. So in bad teams, they're not coordinating. And overall, the team is just less than the sum of their parts. In this case, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. You've got all these people and they have all of these really great skills, but they're not reaching their full potential. So on a nicer note, what do good teams do? What are experiences on a team that really did work? So we have a couple that Amrit's already pulled out from what you were saying. Trust team members are going to back you up. Jennifer said you're allowed to take some risks at work. You really need trust to be able to do that for sure. What else? What other experiences do we have of working on a really great team?
I clicked off so I can say teach. I think one of the things I was going to say earlier, tools can be a real problem if we don't teach people, you know, what we're trying to achieve with those tools that we're using, and we make an assumption that they know what we're trying to accomplish with those tools. So that's probably 4 things. So I'll be quiet now.
That is really important, though. On a team, you receive some tools, you receive some training on how to use the tools. Everyone is kind of together on that. Yeah, that's great. Good communication. Yeah, for sure. Any other things from really good teams?
They have fun and they celebrate.
Yeah, celebration is such an important and I think underrated thing sometimes. You need to acknowledge progress. You need to celebrate wins and successes in order to keep people motivated. And yeah, it has to be fun, especially if you're working with volunteers. So they're not going to come back if they're not having fun. You have to feed them too. That's extremely important. I think that's how Olivia recruited me for a lot of things right off the bat. Come over to my house. There's going to be free food. And then she would rope me into doing a bunch of work for her. It's always about food. Yeah, these are all really important things. And honestly, it's all just the opposite of everything we said about the bad teams. Just take all those bad things and do the opposite of them, and you've got a better team. So here's what we think good teams have. So number 1 is diverse people. I mean, Peter, you touched on this a little bit. We need to have people with with different knowledge and skills in the room. And when we talk about diversity, that can come from all kinds of different places. We want diverse people from different backgrounds, different life experiences. We want people who have, different education, different skills and resources. We need a multitude of voices in the room in order to be able to really move forward. The second thing is we need to have a common purpose. So everyone needs to, first of all, understand what it is that we're doing, and they need to be engaged in the work. They need to want to achieve the purpose. So everyone has to be on the same page and have a common purpose. 3, there needs to be some clear boundaries. Boundaries are important. I'm a therapist as well. I don't know if I mentioned that in my intro right at the beginning, but I'm a social worker, I'm a psychotherapist, and I talk about boundaries with my clients a lot. And they all seem to think that this is a bad thing right off the bat. When I tell them in relationships, you need to have boundaries. And like, oh, but I don't want to put up boundaries with people I love. It's like, no. Boundaries are a good thing because it means that you've established and defined what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in your relationship. And everyone knows that and everyone can respect it. And that's important in kind of all aspects. It's really important for here too. You don't want people who are burning out and working themselves into the ground. You want to be very clear on what the work is, what the boundaries are, what professional relationships look like, all of these things. So boundaries are a good thing. It means that people have structure and they know what to expect. And I tell my clients is that it helps people actually be closer together because they know what everyone else needs from the relationship. It establishes more communication. And then number 4, we also need clear roles. Everyone needs to know what's expected of them and what they're doing. And 5 is we need explicit norms. We need to know how we're all working together. So establishing that very clearly, defining them, not taking for granted that everyone is just going to know what the norms are. We have to define what they are. And then if we have all of these things, what happens with good teams? Basically, again, the opposite of all the things that bad teams don't do. They meet their goals. When everyone is working together and they have a common purpose and they know what they're supposed to be doing and how they're going to accomplish it, they meet the goals that they set. The second thing is that they engage others. People work together really well. 3, they learn and improve. People move up the ladder and they build leadership skills and they build confidence too. I think that's the thing that I keep kind of hammering home here as well. They build confidence in themselves. Many people have the ability to be leaders, but they don't believe that they do, and so they never take on those roles. So as they learn and improve and build their confidence, they're able to move up the ladder and take on more responsibility. And the 4th thing is that they coordinate. They just work really well together. And then effective teams, they have shared responsibility, really effective communication, commitment, and accountability. Accountability is such an important one too. And it's another one that I think has this kind of reaction to it when you say accountability, but accountability is a good thing too. It means that everyone knows what's expected of them, and they know that their team is going to follow up with them if they're not accomplishing their goals. And that doesn't have to look like punishment. It doesn't have to be, well, you didn't do what you were supposed to do, so now you're kicked out. Instead, it can look like, hey, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. Did something happen? Is something going on in your life? Did I not provide you with something that you needed in order to be able to achieve this task? Let's talk about this and figure out how we can help you be able to achieve your goals. So accountability, again, is a good thing. It means that people are checking in and making sure that everyone has the resources and the skills and the mental capacity to be able to do the things that they're expected to do. Effective teams are also stable and independent. They share their purpose, have norms, have clear roles, and they deliver outcomes. They build capacity and enhance learning. All of those things that we're trying to accomplish with the snowflake model. So anything else that anyone wants to talk about in terms of effective teams before we move on to the next section? Does this all make sense? And does it resonate with you? Or are you listening to me talk and being like, nah, I don't think that would actually work? Or maybe it would work except for this one thing that maybe we can address. if anything comes up as we're going through it, feel free to put your hand up or just open your mic and interrupt me at any time. I'm very long-winded. I had to apologize to one of my students today. I'm so long-winded. Please just tell me to stop sometimes. So we are going to link all of this back to strategies and tactics and then talk about tasks. Because that's the theme of this session today. It's just linking it all back to all of the things that we've talked about in previous sections. So from our last session, we talked about strategies and tactics and the difference between them. Your strategy is your long-term goal and how you're planning to achieve your goals. Your strategy gives you a path that you need towards achieving your organization's mission. So it's the big picture. It's what you want to achieve and how you believe you're going to achieve it. Your tactics are the concrete steps that describe how you're going to achieve your strategy. They include the best practices, the specific plans and resources, etc. You might also call them initiatives. Strategy is big picture. Tactics are the small steps that you're going to take in order to get there. A good strategy reflects the core values of the organization, and all the strategies should be actionable. That's really important. I think that that's something that people do intuitively, but it also does need to be kind of explicitly said. If your organization's mission is to bring, democracy into, I don't know, if you're just going to encourage engagement in democratic processes within communities, your organization probably shouldn't be structured as a dictatorship. So your strategy, the way that you're running your organization, it just has to be in line with your core values. It has to align your daily activities and decision-making with the overall goals of the organization. Everything you do should be going back to that original organizational goal and mission. Good tactics sets clear purpose that aids your strategy. It's finite. It has a finite timeline during which specific activities will be completed and their impact measured. The impact measured is often forgotten as well. And I say that because I'm a social worker, I'm a therapist, I have a lot of roles, but I specialize in program evaluation. So that's kind of my thing, is measuring impact. And it's something that a lot of organizations kind of take for granted and they don't often do. That's why I like ICL so much, because I came in here and said, you all need to evaluate your programs. And they said, we sure do, but we don't know how to do it. Why don't you come in and do that for us? And so that's what I did. The survey that you're going to be filling out at the end was made by me. And then tasks are the most specific thing. They are the actual steps that you have to take. And transformative tasks, really like this image, blooming into a beautiful butterfly, metamorphosis. Transformative tasks take it even further because it has a lot more meaning. You're not just asking people to, I don't know, send an email. That's fine. You're probably going to do that sometimes. Emails are necessary. They have to go out. But if all you're having your team do is send emails, that's not really a transformative task. So there's a few kind of components to a transformative task, 5 of them, in fact. There's the task identity. Do participants get to do the whole thing from start to finish? Or are you getting them to do a bunch of really small stuff? Honestly, we could even break down emails. Maybe emails could even be a transformative task because you could actually get people to do the whole thing from start to finish. If I've told someone that I need you to do some outreach, I'm going to need you to go out and research some organizations that are doing the same kind of thing as us. I want you to write an email that's going to engage them, get them interested in what we're doing, and recruit them to come to an event that we're hosting. And then I want you to send that email, and I want you to have a conversation with people if they reply. Great, that's them doing the whole thing from start to finish. It's not me going out and saying, one person is going to do the research on the organizations, and then I'm going to write the emails because I have some very specific idea of what I wanted to say. And then I'm going to get this other person to just copy and paste it and hit send. I want people to get to do the whole thing from start to finish, because when they do that, they're going to reach the second one, task significance. Do they understand and see the direct impact of their work? So if I ask them to do the research beforehand, finding out all of the different organizations and writing the email themselves, then they're going to understand the significance of this. And they're also going to see the direct impact of their work, because when they send out the email, they're going to receive the replies back. And they're going to feel that win when people say, oh yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to this event that you're holding. I'll be there and I'm going to bring some of my team with me. Amazing, that feels great. Skill variety. Two participants engage in a variety of skills. In this case, they would, because they're doing research online. They're also crafting communication. They may even be, writing their email in line with some sort of strategy. They are engaging with other people in the community, and they're recruiting. They're recruiting people to come to an event. Lots of different skills there. And then autonomy. Do participants have the space to make choices about how to work? Maybe I'll ask them to check in with me before they send out the email because I just want to proofread it for them. That's fine. That's some oversight. That's some shared responsibility there. But am I giving them the space to make choices on how they're going to work? Yeah, for sure. I could dictate to them, I want you to email just the people who are on this spreadsheet. I want you to copy and paste the exact email, and I want you to do it all within the hours of noon to 4 p.m. today. That's kind of just dictating what they do, though. If I allow them the space to do it themselves, decide their hours and how they want to organize themselves, it gives them far greater autonomy, and they're probably going to enjoy the work a lot more. I don't like copying and pasting things into an email. I want to come up with my own system that's going to make it feel efficient and organized to me. Great, give them the autonomy to do that. And then feedback. Are the results visible to the person doing the task? Let's say maybe in this circumstance it's not. Maybe I'm getting them to send out this email, but it has a link in it for people to register for the event. So they're not getting that direct feedback from the people they're emailing saying, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to come to your event. If that's the case, then I need to provide them with some feedback and say, hey, Amrit, great job sending out those emails. Since you did them all yesterday, we've had 5 new registrations today. Great. I'm giving them some feedback and letting them see the results that they got from this task. So through all of this, they're going to develop something. This now isn't just copying and pasting emails. This is a transformative task where they're learning some new skills, they're developing autonomy to be able to do it on their own, and they're seeing the results of what they've done. And so hopefully at the end of all of that, they're going to say, wow, I built some confidence in my abilities and I would like to take on more work. Whereas if I just ask them to copy and paste an email, they're probably going to say, well, that was boring and I'm not going to. Or even if they do, they're still not learning anything. So that's the difference between a transformative task and just a regular task. And I think this is the same thing, just put into some boxes. Does that make sense? Has anyone engaged in transformative tasks before? Yeah. And how did you feel doing transformative tasks? It was such an incredible experience that you're speechless.
I can talk a little bit again. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I just well, we do community development at work. So really it's constantly this, really, like I'm looking at this going, this is what we do as a team, like almost every day. It's like, oh, okay, our community members are curious about gardening right now. So one of our team members is like, I love gardening. I'm going to take it on. Let me try and connect with other people and, just let's see. And so what she does is just kind of update us on our group chat. Like, oh, so-and-so joined now. I just connected with so-and-so. And then we see this whole thing start to roll out on group chat. So between like our meetings that we have monthly, all of this stuff is kind of visible to each other. We're all like encouraging each other, like, oh, that's really cool. Oh, hey, I just met somebody. I'm sending them your way. And so we do all of these types of things, and then you just see it just kind of take shape. And then, you know, the report back to the whole team usually ends up being like, we're all kind of pointing out the significance of the planning that happened. Like we all end up doing that together. So it's like, oh, you know, 10 people just joined, 2 of those people never gardened before. Isn't that exciting? Because it's all about like participatory community development. So that's kind of our framework and our lens. So in that sense, like a lot of really exciting stuff happens, and I'm kind of privileged to be to do community development work at work. But yeah, in that sense, yeah, that's kind of what we do all the time, really, because it's community-led stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's why it works so well, and that's why people stay engaged in it too, right? Because that's a very satisfying process to see a project start from just an idea and carry it all the way through to the end and then see the impact that it had on your participants. It's a great feeling. And I'd imagine people stick around to do it again.
Mhm.
Awesome. Yeah. So just to kind of sum that up, tasks are designed with identity, significance, skill variety, autonomy, and feedback in mind. Participants experience some meaningfulness and responsibility and know the results of their work. And you end up with a motivated and committed team with problem-solving skills doing higher quality work. Yeah, this is what this is the meat and potatoes of what happens in a really good team. When you've developed a model where people are able to have autonomy over the work that they do, and you have the right people doing the right tasks, and they have some ability to make decisions and take leadership, this is what you end up with. And it works really well, and it's very satisfying, and the team ends up achieving their goals. Okay. So this kind of breaks it down. Yeah, this is kind of, it's the same thing we really talked about when I gave my whole
Basically
example of females.
that whole section is like, if you wanted to take like another example, if you
Yeah.
escape it, it goes into a completely blank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to go through another example? I think that we've kind of done some examples. If anyone would like to work through this together,
Like what we could do is if I give an example of maybe something, let's say I've experienced, and how would you break it down? Like what would you change about it? Like we could like that's typically what this, and then I think the next piece after that is the body break, from what I can recall. Oh, and there goes my little timer.
Yeah, you are correct. Okay, why don't we do that then, Amrit? You give us an experience, and we'll work through it.
Down. Yeah, so there was this one time where I was working on a campaign, and this had to do with an election years ago. I was a young buck teenager, first time I can go and actually vote. I was like, yeah, yay, I can do things. Very happy, very excited. And I was told that I would be doing some phone canvassing. I'm like, okay, cool, canvassing. I'm cool with doing that. Happy camper. When I got there, I was taken into a basement and given a script that felt like very unnatural and not like my regular, you know, I have a bubbly kind of personality. It was very just like straight to the point and a little boring. And it didn't seem like it was me. I was given a huge list of like, here are the phone numbers that you're gonna call, get through as many as possible. And basically it was really up to me as to, you know, if I was going to list this person as a 1 being a supporter, or a 2 as like a maybe, a 3 as a I don't know yet, 4 I don't know. I wasn't given much direction at that point. But the goal was that I was given is get through as many as possible. I said, okay. So I sat down, looked at the phone. it took me like about 15 minutes, from like that to even figure out how to get to the first phone number, because I wasn't given any training on how to use Call Hub at the time. Again, green young buck trying to figure out my first, little dabble in politics, and doing something. So I was like, okay, cool. I was nervous, and because I was like a little bit shy, and I felt the script was a little bit dorky, I got through them. It was a 2-hour volunteer shift. I got through it. But then when I was done, I sat there and I was like, I don't know if I actually like that. I handed in my sheets, looked of numbers and just like, here you go, have fun with it. The person that I gave my sheets to was not the person I talked to initially. And I left, after that canvassing session. Can you take a guess on how many times they actually volunteered for that campaign again? Any guesses? I see 0. I see 0. I came back one more time on E-Day itself. Like, I'm like, you know what? Let me be nice, okay? That was it. And so, like, what would you say were, if we were to go through this whole transformative task design, how would you actually change what I went through as a young buck trying to do something with an election campaign? So it seemed like the first thing was that I had no instructions, right? In terms of the task significance, like, did I as a volunteer see the direct impact of my work? Do you think I got a sense of like, did my candidate win? I don't even know if they won, it was so long ago. But the answer was really no, right? Did I get to use my volunteer skills or my variety of skills? Did they ask? Not really. They kind of just threw me in there and said, here's your calls, go through it. Autonomy. Did I have any autonomy over my skills? Not really. It was just, unless like at most it's like, yes, I'm following the specific protocol. The only autonomy that I had is teach myself how to use Call Hub, and how to get through the script, right? And feedback. Did I get any immediate feedback on my work? Absolutely not. I was just sent on my merry way. What would you do to kind of change my lack of instructions that I was given? Anyway, you can unmute. It's okay. You don't have to type in the chat. If you either unmute, like, what would you have changed in that case? If you were to run to this campaign, literally everything. That is fair. Like, to give maybe an example in contrast, even a few years later, funny enough for the same candidate, I went back and like, let's see if it's second time's a charm. Let's see. So Jennifer, you put in walk through with you and find out if you've ever done this before and what role you might want to do. 100%. Ask me. What do you want to do? Do you want to actually do phone banking, or are you more comfortable doing something else? Do I want to sit in a basement all day, or do I want to be outside with the sun? Because it happened to be a summer campaign. What about in terms of my and pizza? Yes, feed me. Right. That's always a big piece. And yeah, like you said, Jennifer, I'm a volunteer. I did that for a reason. I thought I could contribute. I want to meet other people. Peter, I see that you unmuted yourself.
I unmuted just in case I wanted to throw something in there after small enough crowd. Maybe I'll just stay on no cool. Dog barking.
Okay, all good. Yeah, what about the direct impact? Like, how would you maybe in that case have your volunteer see the direct impact of, let's say, a call campaign or anything campaign related? Let's say if you have a volunteer coming out to do some work for you, how would you want them to like see the direct impact of the work?
You could debrief at the end of a shift, or periodically, even just to kind of get an idea of the stats and what we're seeing this year compared to next year. Just provide some interpretation after all the data is entered, I guess.
Yeah, just even like as simple as giving feedback of like, hey, you know, you did really well. Look at how many things we did. And here's, you know, and just even like that simple recognition that my work had some sort of result of like, hey, we were able to get through this. And now we know that there are these many ones versus fours. And we know who to call. We can narrow things down, yada, yada, yada. In terms of like delivering a variety of skills, like, again, I think you guys mentioned it, which is ask the person, find out what the skills that they have first, you know, for, let's say, about how to make things work. So the autonomy, how would you give your volunteer, oh, I put, see, Jen, you put, go through the numbers with them, discuss what they said, how many 2s, 3s, and what those numbers actually mean. Yeah, again, giving that context, giving that feedback. And in terms of autonomy, how would you give a volunteer autonomy in terms of like if they're volunteering with you for a campaign? You know, do I have the space to make a choice about the kind of work that I want to do? I see, Jennifer, your head is nodding.
I think that's definitely the first one. You're a volunteer, so you obviously thought, hey, I have a skill I can contribute. And especially when you're enthusiastic, when it's a short-term campaign, you know, like there's something you know you can do already. So not having, and that's happened so many times to me on political campaigns. It's like, why didn't they ask me what I could do? And then I didn't feel utilized to the best of my ability either. And it was a little disheartening, right? But that said, like even if you're like show up and you go, I'll do anything you want, well then even with that, like you have a script and sure there's like a guideline that, you know, the formula in that script that they want you to follow, but you can still be yourself within it. And going through those things and saying, hey, this is the framework, but be authentic, be yourself. You know what I mean? Like doing those.
Genuine, you know, about what you're saying.
Yeah.
Don't be like a robocall kind of a style, right? And then, and like you guys said, giving feedback, right? Giving that feedback to them, the direct feedback as soon as the task is done, or even throughout the task, like, hey, check in on them. Don't just have me sit there for 2 hours by myself in my silo in a grungy basement. Just going through and making calls, it's kind of isolating. It's not really fun. Like on the flip side, 4 years later, I'm possibly this candidate got a new team. And this new team, in contrast, like I went to their campaign door, like ready to roll again, because at this point I was like, what, 21? Just like, yeah, okay, cool, let's go. And the first thing that they asked me at the door was, what do you like to do? And I was like, I like to talk to people, but in person and not over the phone. I like to go to doorsteps. I basically describe myself at that point. I'm like, I'm part German Shepherd and part Golden Retriever. Just depends on what you get on the day. Like, I'm a very happy-go-lucky person. And so they're like, all right, cool. My point person then brought me over to the map and said, all right, here's the area. Let's go canvassing. And, you know, let's hear about a lot of different issues. And they gave me a piece of context that, hey, in this area, housing happens to be the big like hot topic and issue that they want to address. I was like, great, housing, I can talk about it. I know what I'm talking about. I feel confident on that piece. Cool. And I was ready to go, gung ho. And then they asked me like, hey, do you want a partner to come with you, to volunteer with you, you know, and gave me an update that like this volunteer doesn't have a lot of experience with canvassing, so they're a bit of a rookie. You know, do you want to maybe have them go with you and maybe you can show them the ropes? I was like, I'm a little nervous, like, okay, cool, that's fine, but more than happy to, because like, again, there's the Golden Retriever side of me that's very happy-go-lucky and more than willing to share some of the knowledge that I know about like how to do the canvas, how to like what to do in the office and all of that kind of piece, right? This rookie and we went door knocking for a few floors, and then at one point they themselves were able to go by themselves and hang out, do a couple of floors by themselves. We came back, did a whole like high five moment, like, yeah, we did it, okay, cool, we finished our building. You know, we were able to make it back after our shift, went back to the campaign space and did a bit of a debrief with our point person. It was the same person, not two different people this time. And basically went through like, all right, was there anything urgent that came up? You know, what went well? What can we do better? And by the end of it, it's like I felt like, okay, cool, I accomplished quite a bit. I saw not only like the floors, I was able to use the skills that I actually have and want to use. And then I actually got to become a leader and help out a rookie, someone who's new, someone who was green like I was when I first came in 4 years ago, right? I was able to get that ability and that opportunity to kind of upskill my own skills. And after that, you can bet I volunteered quite a few more hours on this round of the campaign, and basically ended up almost becoming one of like the canvas leaders at one point for that campaign. They won. I think that time they definitely won. But yeah, like how does that measure up compared to like my first experience? A lot better, right? It seems like it was a lot simpler. I, as a volunteer, felt happier. My skills got used. And it wasn't just me sitting in a basement by myself talking to people or not getting phone calls picked up, because that happens often. Yeah. Back to you, Mel.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's a really, really good example, Amrit. And you also end up, like, you really do have to ask people what their skills are and what they're interested in, because sometimes you end up with really weird people like me who I have no interest in phone banking, no interest in canvassing. I'm not going to do that. But if you ask me, Melanie, what skills do you have? What do you like to do? I'm going to tell you, I really love Excel. And I would actually love to just sit in a dark basement and do data entry for you. And I guarantee someone is going to want me to do that, because most people do not want that task. But if I'm volunteering, that's the task that I'll take. I'm happy to. So ask your volunteers what you want to do, because every once in a while you come across someone like me who wants to do the task that nobody else is interested in. And I would be absolutely wasted phone banking or canvassing. All right. So basically, just to sum it all up, tasks that are designed to be transformational lead to a motivated and committed team that are doing really good work. Yeah, that's basically it. So why don't we take a short break, and then we will come back afterwards and we're going to do our activity. And I think we'll do it all together in a group. Again, we can get started on our lovely activity. Okay, so for the last little bit, we're going to do two things. We're going to create your own personal leadership statements, and then we're going to go through an activity of just assigning tasks to people. So we are going to look at, I think, the strategy, the timeline that we put together last week as a group. And not everyone was here, but that's okay. It's all pretty well laid out on the timeline. And all we're really doing is going through and assigning tasks to people. So it's okay. The activity will work just fine. So for the leadership statement, these are important, not just for you personally to understand your leadership statement and to create it and find meaning in it, although that is important too. We want you to find a lot of meaning in the work that you're doing, and your leadership statement will help with that. But it's important too for you to consider when you're running a campaign or a project and you're looking to, understand your team a little bit better, asking them to create a leadership statement or something similar. You don't have to call it the same thing. And to understand what kind of person they are and what kind of work they want to do and what they find meaningful is really important as well. It's going to help you connect to people, understand what's meaningful to them, and assign them tasks and be part of teams that is going to be really meaningful to them and help them be committed and engaged. So we'll go through your leadership statements and then we will define some tasks. So what is a leadership statement? It is much simpler than an organizing statement, you'll be happier to hear. So it's this fill in the blanks. I am a leader who values blank. I will work in blank to blank by blank. So let's look at an example, because that's a lot of blanks. So here's our example. I am a leader who values justice. I will recruit 2 neighbors to call our MP about Islamophobia and the need for an independent oversight of border guards by November the 1st. So this is an example from like one of our previous campaigns and stuff that we worked on. So we know I'm a leader who values justice. We know this is a person who's very interested and engaged in advocacy work, they will recruit 2 neighbors to call our MP about Islamophobia. So we know that they like talking to people. We can ask some more questions about that. Phone calls or door knocking, which one do you prefer? And they're going to ask them to call their MP about Islamophobia and the need for an independent oversight of border guards. Wonderful, by November 1st. We know that they have time between now and November 1st, and they're going to be committed until then. Great, this gives us a lot of information about our person. And it also helps them too. It helps them frame the work that they want to do and how they want to do it and what their commitment is. By asking people to put together a statement like this, you're asking them to make a commitment to themselves as well. So we're going to quickly put together our own leadership statements. I think we said, what did we want to do? How much time were we going to give? I think we were only going to give like 2 minutes, but I think we can give you a little bit more time than that because we're going to have a bit of time at the end. So let's say 5 minutes. We're going to give you a whole 5 minutes to define what kind of leader you are and what kind of work you want to do. If you were going to do this with your actual teams, I would suggest giving a little bit more than 5 minutes, but for our purposes today. So that means that by 7:28, we'll come back and we'll have some leadership statements and we'll share them all together. I think that would be kind of a nice way to talk together because we're a team too. So we'll go back to my my blank slide. So if you just want to fill these in, and if you have any questions or comments, things you want to talk about, like, feel free to unmute yourself anytime.
Is anybody going first, or?
I think you might have just nominated yourself.
I think again, I nominate myself to go first. I'll check if the water's cold or warm. Okay. So I put, it's a bit long. I'm very good at making really long sentences. Okay, I am a leader who values collective work and accountability. So I will ensure that that I follow through on my agreed upon commitment to the Greater Toronto Health Coalition Committee that I'm with, to make sure that I take point in calling and setting up the volunteer schedule and setting up the ballot boxes and the pamphlets for the weekend of May 26th and 27th referendum vote at 290 Danforth.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's really good. It shows what you value, what you're going to do, and it very clearly connects to why that's meaningful for you. And it gives a specific date as to when you're going to accomplish that. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
I was waiting for you to point out that my microphone. Then I'll be volunteering.
Yeah, then you've unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I sort of went a little higher probably than I should have, but I put that I'm a leader who values sustainable, supportive housing. And in that, I will create a model of sustainable, supportive housing that can be continuously evaluated to offer the highest level of continuous support by July 18th. There is a board meeting, and I believe that one of the biggest things we need to do is prove that we actually have a model that we think can work. And I think that's what I'm after.
That's great. It's very aspirational. But that is really awesome too, because I mean, both of these leadership statements are very good, and they're both very different. Because Peter and Jennifer, I think you both have different interests and skills and things that you want to do, and that's totally fine. I think that means that the leadership statements are working. If everyone here had a leadership statement that sounded kind of the same, I think I would have done my job wrong. Because everyone here is an individual with different skills and different things that you're interested in and different things that you're trying to accomplish. If everyone was setting up ballot boxes, we would have too many people setting up ballot boxes, and that would be not helpful anymore. You'd have 12 people at every polling station out here just trying to set up ballot boxes. And if everyone was trying to create different models for affordable housing, we'd have 12 million different models. And that would be too many to ever get through. So it's good that people are working on different things. Both of these things are very valuable. Both of them need to get done, and both of them are going to be done by people who are interested and engaged in doing them. And that's the important thing. So that worked out very well, that we had such contrasting leadership statements right at the beginning. Perfect. Thank you both. Who else would like to share theirs?
I can
go
go.
ahead.
I am a leader who values reducing and reusing materials, and I will work with Creative Reuse Toronto to set up regular sales so we can divert fabric and other art supplies from the landfill. And we'll have regular monthly sales starting June 17th and hopefully into next year.
Amazing. Oh, that's fantastic. That's really interesting to think about as well, that there are organizations out there that do work like that. Because I think every artist and crafts person definitely has a closet full of stuff that they're not using, right? And there's someone out there who could probably use it. So the fact that things are being repurposed and reused and not just ending up in the landfill, especially because some of them are pretty toxic, right? I used to do like oil paintings and stuff. And you don't want that to end up in the landfill. So it's really good that we have people out there who are doing that kind of work. Amazing. I'd never even heard of that before. Thank you for sharing, Joanna. Who would like to go next?
I can share.
Go ahead.
So I'm a leader who values adventure. I will work in my paddling community and with Whitewater, Ontario to secure permanent access to the Ottawa River Whitewater section by 2032, which is the deadline of the current temporary agreement that was negotiated last year.
Amazing. Oh, that's really cool. I didn't even know that there were a whitewater area on the Ottawa River. That's really cool. Amazing. Learning all kinds of new things today. Thank you for sharing, Christine. And Sylvia, you're last, so you're up next. Are you still here with us, Sylvia? Maybe she stepped out for a bit. That's okay. If she comes back, we can always come back. So let's move on to our assigning transformative tasks. So I think this is the one that we were working through last week. So we give just a little bit of an overview for context for the people who weren't here last week as to what this campaign is and what they were trying to accomplish. So for this one, was led by Mel, who was from Dixon Hall. And she is working together with her team to hold a debate for the Toronto mayoral election. And we went through all the different all of the different tactics that it was going to take to get there. So the end goal is to elect a progressive mayor who's going to care about things like housing affordability and that kind of stuff. And these are all of the the strategy was going to be like hosting this debate in order to like elevate the voice of the candidates, as well as allow residents within the community to be able to talk directly to the candidates and make an informed choice on who is going to be a progressive mayor that's going to work towards issues that the community cares about. And these are all the different tactics that they were going to engage in. So their first thing is they need to build a team. That's kind of just, honestly, that's the first task for pretty much any campaign you're going to run, unless you're just already working within an established team. Your first task is always going to be to build a team. And then next, they were going to reach out to a couple of different places, businesses through the BIA, some different faith groups in the area, and to resident associations. Then they're going to host a debate and social event. So there was going to be a formal debate session. And then afterwards, they were going to have a social event because they thought that the debate would be really great to have the candidates and the mayoral candidates all talk about their platforms and what they're going to do for housing affordability. And then afterwards, allow service users from Dixon Hall to talk directly to the candidates in a more informal environment so that they would feel more comfortable in being able to ask them questions. So we're going to have those two aspects to the event. And then after that, the comms team is going to take a whole bunch of information, produce a snapshot or summary of each candidate's response, and put together like a kind of a social media blast that can go out. And then at the end, the hope is that they're going to elect a progressive mayor. And I think this was the get out to vote event. So, I mean, it's not just enough to make sure that people are informed, because if that was the case, we'd just be running an awareness campaign. Instead, this is going to be linked to the get out to vote event, which helps people, I think, especially people who are experiencing homelessness, to understand how they can vote, even if they don't have a fixed address, so that people who are participating in this, not just like, oh, great, I know who I would want to vote for now, but I can't actually vote because I don't know how. They would have the information they need in order to actually go out and elect that progressive mayor. Because wouldn't that suck? Everyone comes out to this event, they're like, oh yeah, gung-ho, I'm gonna totally elect this person, except I can't because I don't know how to vote if I don't have a piece of ID with my address on it. So thinking about all of this then, let's go past building a team, because the team is all of us when we're doing this exercise. So we've got how many of us? 7 of us who are in the room right now. We are the team. We're going to talk amongst ourselves and decide who has what skills to do which of these things, and we're going to assign them to different people. So in this case, it would be really good. I don't know. I think it would almost be kind of interesting to do this as like a role play. Although I've been sitting here trying to think of a different word other than role play, because as soon as you say role play, people don't want to do it anymore. But if we had one person who was the leader and wanted to go through kind of the process of talking amongst the team here to decide who's good at what, who is going to be best suited for each of these tasks, and how can we offer some support to each one of them. So I don't know, would anyone like to be the leader in our not a role play? It can be me, but I've been talking an awful lot. Jennifer's not muted, which makes me think that she wants to volunteer. If no one wants to volunteer, I'm going to volunteer Amrit to do it.
I was just gonna say, like, are we volunteering Jennifer to do it, or I see Peter unmuted?
Oh, Peter unmuted. As soon as someone unmutes, I think they're volunteering.
Jennifer, so clearly. I was going to jump in though, because clearly, Melanie, I want to fight you over the analysis data that happens toward the end.
We're going to be arguing here.
Exactly. But in the early goings, I suppose, you know, if we're looking for someone who wants to go door to door and talk to the businesses in the neighborhood, I'm wondering if from our early conversation, we've you know, discovered who that might be, Emery.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what we're looking for in doing this activity, is building on past conversations, being the person to be like, okay, we've got all of this stuff going on. Amrit, I know that you really like knocking door to door. Businesses, yeah, maybe we could do that through email, but we really need someone to go and knock on the door of all the resident associations, because we know that they're like residents in these buildings or people who are living in shelters right now. They are not going to answer their emails. We probably don't even have their emails. So we need someone who's going to go in person to go and knock on the doors. Amrit, I know you like doing that. I know that you're really good at engaging with those populations. So are you willing to take that on? And Amrit says, yes, I sure am.
I'll say yes, and I'm filling out the table on the next slide. When?
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 Now, I mean, if we only had somebody who, compassionately cares about the service users and is interested in sort of a teaching role as well, I think, there's something we could fill out there. Does that describe anyone? Do they feel that's something they could handle? Yes, Jennifer.
Okay, sure, yeah, can do that.
Excellent. So when do we need our outreach done by?
Oh, sorry.
Hmm.
Do I have to say, yeah, okay, so, okay. Well, I think I can get that outreach done, at least with the first 5 businesses and the BIA within 2 weeks. And then we can come back with a bit more of a strategy outreach plan as well as that initial one.
I think I probably wasn't as clear as I could have been, because I was already jumping to debate and social event with service users and looking for someone who likes to work with service users and likes to be in sort of a teaching capacity. And that's why I thought perhaps that would be a really good task for Jennifer.
I could do that too.
Maybe we should pass it around. Now you should find something and then try and point to somebody else. You can get their agreement.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is really good too, and we can get like kind of creative in this stuff too, and breaking it down into really small tasks. So we know that we need. So let's focus on just the debate. So we've got some outreach stuff done. Amrit's going to help with that. Jennifer's going to help with that. That's great. Presumably, we also have someone who's like liaising with the mayoral candidates themselves to get them to come, because it would not be a really great event if they didn't show up. So that's great. We've got that. And then we can get like really down kind of into the nitty gritty of what's going to happen in the actual debate. So that's when we could turn to someone like Joanna per se and say, hey, I know that you're interested in arts related stuff. You're pretty creative. We're going to need some like signs and some interesting things to engage people and let them know to come to our event. Would you be interested in doing something like that? Or do you know anyone else in the community who does like graphic design work or something interesting that they could do to help advertise our event or help brighten up the event space?
I have some people I could reach out to, but I'm also fairly experienced reading policy documents, and I could maybe review the candidates' platforms and craft some questions.
Amazing. Fantastic. Awesome. So yeah, so we can really break down the tasks like this. And I think Amrit has been, yeah. And then as for June, because we're not going to get through every single one of the tasks, but as we're going through them, we're going to write down what the next steps and actions are, when they're going to do it, and assign that to who. And I mean, at ICL, we always do that whenever we're assigning tasks to other people. It's like, okay, who is going to do what and by when? And we need to answer all of those questions before we move on to like the next thing. Because if we don't assign a task to someone and tell them when they need to do it, is probably going to just fall off our radar and it's not going to get done. So it wouldn't be enough for me to turn to Joanna and say, hey, you're experienced in reading policy. Do you want to craft some questions? And she says, yeah, sure, that sounds good. But if I don't say like, okay, we need that done by this particular day, even if she's super diligent and on top of it, she might miss the deadline because she just doesn't know when it is. So we want to make sure we're being real specific in these tasks. So yeah, this is great. And Peter, I think you were doing a good job in directing people and building on, like we said, existing knowledge about them. Hey, Camera, you just told a story about how you really like door knocking. Is that something you'd like to do for this as well? Or Jennifer, I know you have a skill of talking to service users. Is that something you would like to do? And then assigning that task to them. So yeah, this is great. Does anyone have any questions or comments at all about assigning transformative tasks to team members? I will say it can be kind of awkward, especially if you don't know people super well, or if they start saying no, like, oh yeah, I know that you're really good at this thing. Would you like to help? And they're like, no, not really. But getting comfortable with the discomfort is also an important skill to have when you're leading a team. And it's okay if people say no. They're allowed to say no. They have autonomy, right? And we just talked about that. And having autonomy means that they're able to say no or say that they're interested in doing something else. And that's totally fine. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, then I am actually going to pass it over to Josh, I think. Is this the right time for us to give him the floor? Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. And I'd like to start by bringing greetings and thanks from all of the board members of the Douglas Coldwell Leighton Foundation. My name's Josh Bijak. I have the pleasure of being the executive director of this charity, Tommy Douglas's charity. It was founded 50 years ago to do exactly the kind of work that we're doing here tonight. So I would like to say congratulations to every single one of you who have gone through this program. It is of the utmost importance that we build strength in communities to be able to organize people together in order to do the kind of good work that we've been talking about. I know that our foundation is strengthened by the relationship that we have with the Institute for Change Leaders. I'd like to take a moment to thank and appreciate all of the trainers that you've had, these professionals who've been able to guide you through these sessions. It's our endeavor to make sure that this kind of community leadership training, this education work continues here at the foundation. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can contact us directly. I encourage you to sign up and find out more about this foundation. The charity, like I said, is the home of Tommy Douglas, MJ Coldwell, J.S. Wordsworth, and my very dear friend, Jack Leighton. All of their legacies and their work help to inspire a brand new generation who are doing exactly what it was that they wanted us to be doing out in our communities, building strength, building power to make transformative change in people's lives so that all of us benefit. Once again, please do visit our website, find out more about this charity. We are partners with the ICL, and we will remain diligent in our effort to provide more of these kinds of sessions. So please do stay tuned. I would personally like to get to know each and every one of you. And so once I'm done, I'm going to throw my email in the chat. Please feel free to provide me with any feedback you may have, or if you just want to get in touch, I'd be happy to do so. And in return, myself and the team at the ICL will certainly be in touch to let you know about more leadership training opportunities as they arise. But once again, congratulations on sticking through this entire program. I'm sure the folks here at the ICL We'll make much of this information available to you so that you have it and you continue to use it, and then build the teams that you need to affect change in your communities. So thank you all very, very much tonight. I hope you've all enjoyed yourselves. And I think I'd like to give a round of applause to all of our trainers who've helped us. So, thank you all very, very much. I'm very grateful, and I look forward to getting to know you. And one last thing, I would be really interested to hear your stories. What happens next when you take the information you've learned, the skills that you've developed, and you bring them into your communities and attach them to the issues that are important to you, whether it is affordability, affordable housing, what have you, those skills are transferable. I would love to hear those stories. And so please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know all about them. So again, thank you all very, very much. And thank you very much, Melanie, for giving me the opportunity here to say thank you to all of you. And on behalf of the Douglas Cola Foundation, I hope you all have very, very, very much success in your endeavors. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Josh. ICL does very much value the relationship that we have with the foundation. We look forward to doing a lot more really good work together too. So thanks for stepping in today. Really appreciate that. All right. So we have just a couple of things left on our to-do list before we exit out from the session today. One of them being, we just want to hear what were your key learnings from this session? What is the most important thing that you're going to be taking away today? Feel free to just open up your mic, shout it out. What'd you learn? What are you excited about? In the chat, I can see getting clear on where I want to put my volunteer efforts. Yeah, it's important, right? Your time is super valuable, and getting clear on what's important to you and what you want to do. Absolutely, that's important.
I guess I'll go with structuring a transformative task, making sure there's value in it for everyone. I certainly, yeah, definitely want to.
It's something that I think we understand a little bit intuitively, but breaking down like the steps and what makes it like a task transformative and how to get there is, I think it's really useful too. Anything else important that you'll be taking away today? Or just in general from the training as a whole? What was really meaningful to you?
I think something that was meaningful for me was just that I feel like there's a lot of the things that I learned out of this, like even tonight with the snowflake, being able to name some of my style was really useful, because then I can kind of framework that. I can kind of go, like if I'm having kind of a crappy day, or or if it's like I'm struggling through something, to sort of be able to kind of pause, step back and go, okay, let me kind of look at this and what feels authentic and where do I kind of align myself with, and just like it feels very practical and a good guide and reminders, and yeah, helps me identify my own style as well.
Yeah, some self-reflection in there really helps with orienting yourself to the work that you want to do. Yeah, absolutely.
I loved hearing that the momentum for all this comes through like our own stories. So like understanding each other's stories, and like telling our activist story, I guess. And yeah, it's really cool.
Mhm. Yeah, it feels very, it helps you feel more connected when you know that it's stories and people and relationships that are powering this. Yeah, absolutely. If there's anything else anyone wants to share, go ahead, put it in the chat or open up your mic, interrupt me, totally fine. We are going to move on to kind of our last thing that I'm going to ask of all of you. So like I very briefly mentioned, one of the really important things about doing this kind of work is taking a step back and evaluating things, looking at what was really good, what was not so good, did we achieve what we were trying to achieve, did we achieve something entirely different, what happened in the activities that we just did. So in the spirit of that, ICL does have a survey that we like to have our participants complete. So I'm going to just stick the, oh, Emmett's already beaten me to it. Look at that. Go team. So Amrit has put the link to the survey in the chat. It doesn't take very long to fill out, and it is really important. Like I said, it helps us evaluate whether or not we met our objectives. It helps us improve our programs. It also is kind of required because we have to report back to our funders and let them know, did we actually do the thing that we said we were going to do? And by doing that, hopefully they will choose to fund us again next year so that we can do more of these trainings. So it's really important for our sustainability as well. So we would very much appreciate it if you would fill out the survey. Positive feedback, critical feedback, anything you'd like to put in there is very welcome. And we would also like to invite you to join our Alumni Association as well. So the Alumni Association is open to anyone who has completed any ICL training. They do some really interesting stuff. What they do is kind of dependent on what the members are interested in. So I can't even really say concretely what they're doing next because it's all dependent on what people are interested in and what skills and resources the members bring into their work with the Alumni Association. That said, it is a very cool organization. It's a great resource to stay involved with ICL. So yes, we'd love it if you join that as well. So that said, this was our last session. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for engaging in this. Very much appreciated. Thank you for giving up your Tuesday evenings for 6 weeks straight.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Yes, thank you so much. It's been great.